He misses that hook and a right hand over the top. That hook landed, and down goes Rolls in a heat. This might be over already.
This fight is over.
His right arm is pinned down. Rolls looks up.
8, 9, he's out.
Right hand, left hand, in the corner. Schwarz is in trouble. Big man's blasting away. He's taking a huge punishment.
Gotta get in there.
10 seconds left. It's over. TKO victory, and still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 0.2 of Throwing Jabs podcast. I'm Jason Garcia, and I'm here with Jared Jones. Now, let's just dive into it. We're recapping some fights. First off, we're going to talk about Triple G knocking out Steve Rolls in the fourth round. What did you think of that fight, Jared?
I think it went kind of as expected. I thought Triple G would dominate, and he did.
Yeah, it was really a bounce-back fight from the Canelo fights, and it did go as expected. We expected Triple G to win dominantly. It took him to the fourth round to get the knockout. But one thing I think it showed in this fight was Triple G still has that power. We didn't see it against Canelo, seeing as how he went 24 rounds with Canelo.
Yeah.
But Triple G still does have that knockout power, and that's something we can expect going into either Canelo rematch or some other possible suitor for a fight. So I think, do you think that the Canelo rubber match is the next fight for Triple G?
See, that's tough for me. And in any other situation outside of boxing, if somebody had two matches against somebody else and had a loss and a draw in those two matches, I would say for what? But being that these fights, I scored both of them for Triple G. So while the wins and draws and losses have to mean something, it's a sport that's subjective when it comes to wins and losses. And all of that being said, no, I don't think a rematch makes sense because at the end of the day, boxing is in the business of entertaining. And these were not the most entertaining fights. If they do it again, it goes to a decision again. It's a close fight again. People are arguing again over who won. We're not going to have a Marquez-Pacquiao part 3 where somebody just knocks down. I don't see that. I would foresee another 12-round close fight, and I'd rather see some of these other guys. I'd rather see both of them. I think there's reasonable suitors for both of them to go out there and really have quality fights.
All right, yeah, let's get into some of those possible suitors I have written down. First off, the WBO super middleweight champ, Billy Joe Saunders. He's 28-0. He had a common opponent with Triple G in David Lemieux. And how do you think Billy Joe Saunders matches up with Triple G?
Well, see, and I think Triple G and Canelo, win these fights. But I would rather see, even there's Demetrius Andrade out there is undefeated.
Yeah. He
doesn't have a lot of big-name opponents, but his last 10 opponents are 242-12. So he's been fighting guys with good records for quite some time. He's a big middleweight, and I think that's a good matchup for Triple G or Canelo.
I think that matchup is lovely, and I think that would, if Triple G were to take that fight with Demetrius Andrade, then I think that would set up perfectly for a rubber match, seeing as how Andrade is the WBO middleweight champ, so that would lead into a unification bout, and I think that's something boxing needs really bad right now, is a unified champion, seeing as how it gets messy with all these champions.
Absolutely.
Another name is Callum Smith. He is the WBA super middleweight champ. That is a belt that Triple G held before the Canelo fight. What do you think about that?
Well, holding the belt before I can't stand the stripping of the belts that goes on based on sanctioning fees and other BS. And again, boxing is in the business of entertaining. And whoever in their childhood or in their life or in their process of falling in love with the sport of boxing, whoever said, a guy should lose a title somewhere outside of the ring, at a negotiating table or at a contract signing. They should lose their championship. If they stay in that weight class and beat the other guy, that's the champion. So I think unifications make sense. Yeah, you should go get all the belts, but if they're just going to take them and give them to 4 new guys when you're done, it doesn't make sense to go collecting.
And then there isn't just normal champions. There's regular champions. There's lineal champions.
Silver.
There's interim champions. It is a big mess, and we will talk about that later in the show about a way to fix that. But moving on, who do you think is, if not Canelo, Are you think Andrade is the best bet for Triple G?
For the next guy, I think Billy Joe Saunders has the statistics, and I think Andrade has the talent and capability. So the guy that makes sense and has earned his way is probably Billy Joe Saunders, but Andrade, I think, is the guy to watch out for. If I'm Triple G or Canelo and I'm looking down there at this pack of undefeated guys chasing us to the top, that's the guy I'm looking at that scares me the most.
Okay. I disagree with you there. I think Billy Joe Saunders is the guy. He trains with Tyson Fury. I'm a big Tyson Fury fan. So when you're best friends with someone who's on top of the world right now, I think you get a little bit of that rub, you know? You get a little bit of that greatness rub. Now, moving on to Tyson Fury and his fight this past weekend with Tom Schwarz, a second-round TKO. This fight went as I expected. Tyson Fury is not a knockout artist. He isn't going to come in like Deontay Wilder and knock someone out in the first round.
Yeah.
Granted, Schwarz, he isn't the Brazil because he hasn't fought the guys. But if you go back and you look at what the heavyweight division has been, it's for the past little bit here, it's been about Europe. It's been about Klitschko, all these guys coming up from Europe, and Schwarz is a German. So he's coming up the same way that Klitschko did, that not necessarily Anthony Joshua because he wasn't in the Olympics, but Fury, all these big European monsters that we have had in the past. So I think it was a good fight, and it was what we expected from Fury. What did you think of the fight?
I was so impressed by Fury's boxing and went back and looked, and I have to admit that it led me to think about the whole heavyweight landscape and the argument, because I've always been a hard Deontay Wilder supporter, Bomb Squad, from when he first came out. Me and a good friend of mine argue back and forth. He liked Joshua, I like Wilder. Never happened to see them undefeated and face each other. But I'm wondering if I'm still picking Wilder out of habit, because when I started that argument, it was Joshua's not going to learn the kind of punching power Deontay Wilder has. But Wilder, over time, will pick up the boxing skills that Joshua has. And I haven't seen Wilder grow and adjust. He still looks good, and he's maybe one of the hardest punchers ever. Max Kellerman says he's in the conversation. I'm going to take his word for it. So that being said, I don't think he's come along and grown as a skillful boxer at the rate that I would have liked to see him. And when I watched Tyson Fury's last fight, boy, this guy can box. This guy's been doing it his whole life. He was bred for this, and the skills that he displayed, and there was a calm patience about him going after the finish. He was after it, but he was still throwing good, smart boxing punches. Deontay Wilder, I don't see once that he got somebody hurt and threw good, smart punches. Wilder could fall into that same trap Joshua did with a guy like Ruiz, where you've got him stunned and then get clipped because you leave yourself wide open. Fight. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. That's true.
Now, I agree with you what you're saying about Wilder. I have a friend who, from his last fight with Brazil, he went to me and he said, Wilder is learning boxing. Look, he's throwing body punches. If just throwing body punches is your defense for him becoming a better boxer, I don't. But Fury, he put on a show, and I was seeing glimpses of Canelo Alvarez, the way he was slipping punches on the ropes. Yeah. I was seeing the footwork of not on the level of Lomachenko, but for a heavyweight, that footwork and dancing around Schwarz was just phenomenal.
It's tough to think that he was over 300 pounds and came down, because when you look at him fight and you think heavyweights, you think Evander Holyfield, Chris Bird, James Toney, maybe more Ali than Tyson. I think of guys that started at middleweight. You know, Holyfield, Bird, and Toney, they all started at middleweight and ended up at heavyweight. So what you saw was good feet, good head movement, good jab, you know, the lighter, not heavyweight things that help somebody win. Yeah, I'm actually more excited to see a Wilder Fury rematch than I have been than I was before that last Fury fight. He looks like he's getting better. Yeah,
exactly. Now let's move on to some of the. And we talked about the fight. Let's talk about some
and you agree with that. Fury, of all of the heavyweights, aside from maybe Ruiz, he's the only one that looks like he's showing improvement.
Yeah, exactly. I think pure boxing status, you got to put Tyson Fury and Ruiz up there. Yeah. Ruiz has the typical Mexican boxing. He slips and he throws he invests time into the body and then looks up for his knockout shot.
Good counterpuncher, yep.
Yeah. And then Tyson Fury is showing us like Lomachenko-esque footwork and the ability to slip punches and that stuff of these lighter weights, which is amazing. Now, I want to move on to some of the pre-fight antics. First off, going into this fight, there was a rumor that Andy Ruiz would be stripped of the WBO title and it would be put on the line for this fight. Now, that rumor came up because the winner of this fight is the mandatory contender for the WBO title. It obviously did not happen, and it was just a lineal heavyweight title on the line. With that news coming out, after the Ruiz and Joshua rematch, does that mean we're going to get Tyson Fury against the winner of Ruiz and Joshua?
Oh, well, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that fight. I said earlier, I think that the whole idea of stripping, at best, titles should be lost in the ring, and at worst, titles should be lost on the scale.
I agree with you completely.
To strip a title and give it to what they've turned into is trinkets for the best guy that night, and not championship titles, you know?
Luckily, that did not happen, like we said, but that does... It looks like down the line, the WBO will be pushing for a fight that we haven't seen yet in Fury and either Ruiz
or Joshua.
Also, one of the big talking points coming out of the fight was Fury's entrance. He comes out in the Apollo Creed get up. He comes out and does America. Yeah, and I like what he said. He is here. He wants to be the face of the United States heavyweight boxing. And right now, we have two champions. The United States has all the championship belts for boxing, but we have Fury, the Englishman, coming over and saying, no, I want to be the face of the United States boxing. What do you think about that, Jared?
You know, I like that. I like the showmanship. I like that he's marketing himself. I think a lot of boxers haven't figured that part out. You know, you can be humble and still have fans. And I think that most boxers want to be good sports, and they're gentlemen, and they have trouble marketing themselves as a result. So I really respect that this guy, without going all Adrian Broner, has found a way to play the hero for some and the heel for others, and that's what's going to earn you fans. So I really respect what he's done there. I respect even more the fact that his fight matched his entrance, unlike Apollo Creed.
Yeah.
This guy lived up to that ring entrance and turned into somebody Americans can follow, if that, you know.
Yeah, this is skyrocketing him. I think coming out of the fights between the big three heavyweights, he's got to be the one that's used this fight to propel him even higher. Like what we just talked about. You were talking about how you're changing your mind on Deontay Wilder.
Yeah.
Like that's a big deal.
Oh, that's huge. That's huge. I've been following all three of them for the, through the Olympics, except minus Fury. You know, the thing that came to my mind when I was looking at Wilder's recent fights is I always compare Chad Dawson. He's local. He's from right here in New Haven. Okay. To Bernard Hopkins. Because these are two guys. Early on, Bernard Hopkins, he was one of the best, but he didn't really set himself apart from everybody else until he started adjusting. Until he started losing some of his youthful talents and gifts, this born-in stuff started to go away, and he had to make adjustments. And Chad, on the other hand, love him to death, never made the adjustments. There were things that he could have done to compensate for the fact that when you're not faster than everybody else anymore because you're 30, 32, 36, 42, some of these guys, and you've slowed down, you have to do other things to find a way to win. Bernard Hopkins did all of those things. Deontay Wilder, I fear, has not done enough of those things. He's become reliant. If the Tyson Fury fight was any indication, you've got the same size, the guy, and your boxing skills are not. You've got the same time in, all of those things that make sense about that fight, and yet you were reliant on that punch, on that knockdown. You needed that to pull out the draw. And on some scorecards, you still lost that fight, and I get those.
Yeah, I was one of those people. I had Fury winning. Now, you brought up the size. If you didn't have a chance to see it, ESPN put out a lovely little 3-minute video about Tyson Fury's size.
Oh, I did see that.
He's bigger than any football player. Not weight-wise, because some of the linemen push 300. Yeah. But he's taller than anyone in the NFL. They compared him to Gronk, but with a couple extra inches. And then
and reach.
Yeah, and reach. They said the only real big-name superstar with a longer reach than him is
KD.
KD, yeah. So it's wild. This is a freak athlete. And he's got these God-given to be able to move around the ring like that and be that and have that God-given physical. He doesn't have the muscles. He's not Anthony Joshua, but he's got that reach, that length. That's tough.
Well, he's a boxer. I hate as a rule. I don't like Muhammad Ali comparisons. But I think this is what people liked so much about Muhammad Ali is that he could box. Here was a heavyweight that wasn't Mike Tyson. That wasn't necessarily going to go in there with 6 or 7 punches, and if one of them lands, I'm going to rip your head off, and after that, I'm going to be tired. He can go all 12 rounds, and then get up off the canvas or pick you apart if you're not good enough. A la Tom Schwarz. If you're outclassed and out of your league, he's going to pick you apart a little bit at a time, stay out of danger, and get the surefire W. And that's what he did, and Joshua was unable to do that. I've seen Wilder against lesser opposition unable to do that.
Yeah, I think...
What does Fury do against Ruiz? It's a similar fight. From my perspective, it's the same thing. Fury goes in there, he picks apart a lesser man, and,
I think it's going to last longer because Ruiz is very tough.
Yeah.
But the length with Fury, Ruiz will not be able to get in.
He'll hit him with whatever he wants, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one of the... I think Fury's length going into the Wilder fight was one of the big reasons why I had Fury, because Wilder does get in and land these punches, but it's on the shorter guys. And when you're going up against a longer, lankier guy, it's going to be tougher to get in and land a punch.
Yeah, well, then you talked about Billy Joe Saunders having Fury to spar with. And that's, let me tell you, in a gym, that's invaluable to have a guy that size, that's bigger than everyone else. Because who does Deontay Wilder find as a sparring partner? Kevin Durant is not going to spar with Deontay Wilder. Gronk is not going to come and spar with Wilder. None of those guys that are even close. Aaron Judge, you won't see him getting any rounds in. I'm sure it's against his contract.
Yeah.
So you can't really find sparring partners. Having a guy that big in the ring across from you, you want somebody who you can at least practice that with. And the heavyweights, that gets harder. When you're 6'9", 285, that's tough.
We've talked about a lot. We talked a lot about the heavyweight division right now. I would like to pick your brain a little bit. One of my friends texted me after the Fury fight, and he wanted me to rank the Ruiz-Joshua fight, the Wilder-Brazil fight, and the Fury-Schwarz fight. From best to worst, where do you place those fights?
Oh, well, if we're talking about the top 3 heavyweights, I mean, the Ruiz-Joshua has to be the worst. Am I talking about entertainment value here?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Ruiz-Joshua was the most entertaining fight because of the upset. And second has to be Tyson Fury, because I'm a bit of a boxing purist. I appreciate the artistry of what he did to that other undefeated grown-ass man in the ring. I respect what happened there. He picked him apart, stayed out of danger, and beautiful. Wilder, Brazil,
It was what was expected.
Yeah, you did what was expected. It was exciting and flashy and fantastic, but it wasn't those other. It didn't have those elements the other two of them had.
Yeah, even Fury, that's how I expected the fight to go down, but I didn't expect it to get stopped in the second round.
Yeah.
I thought it would go longer than that.
Yeah, he looked really crispy.
Yeah. Before we move on from that fight, where do you think Fury goes from here? Obviously, we want to see the winner, him face either the winner of Wilder Ortiz 2 or Ruiz and Joshua 2. But if they already have scheduled other fights, I'd imagine Fury's going to pick another opponent here. What I have here is Dillian White and Oscar Rivas. They have a fight coming up in July. Dillian White, he beat Joshua Parker. He lost to Anthony Joshua. So I think he's a solid contender, and that would be a solid fight. But he's got this guy, Oscar Rivas, who's coming in. He's number 10th in the rankings for heavyweight. He's undefeated. So I think that's a fun fight. And do you see Fury taking the winner of that fight?
I would be less interested in that than a Povetkin fight. And I think the best fight we're going to get here is Fury versus the Ruiz-Joshua 2 winner. But I would like him to see him fight Povetkin in the meantime.
Yeah, Alexander Povetkin is the only one in the top 10 without a dancing partner right now.
Yeah.
So
well, and his only loss is Klitschko.
And Joshua.
Oh, and Joshua, yes.
Joseph Parker, he just got a new opponent. He's fighting this weekend. So maybe if he gets past that could be another opportunity. But there's guys for him to pick, for not necessarily him to pick, but there are opponents for him in the meanwhile for Ruiz-Joshua or Wilder Ortiz. So, hear me out. Do you think, we haven't officially gotten word Wilder Ortiz 2 is going down. Wilder's just said they're working on it. Do you think that with this big fight from Fury, do you think they can work to get that done?
Anything else I'll take anybody else on this list over Ortiz for Wilder just because of Ortiz's age.
His age, but he knocked him down that was the toughest
but he
fight
lost.
For Wilder.
It's the
Fury.
same argument as my Triple G Canelo argument. If a guy's 0-1-1, for what? What do you put yourself in danger now with a guy who knocked you down once before, who's 40 years old, who 2 years from now isn't likely to be fighting and definitely won't be on this level as he is. This guy's just about to disappear and has the capability of beating you. If you're going to take that loss, take it to Povetkin, Joshua, White, Rivas, any of these guys. And any of the other guys that we've mentioned at heavyweight, I'd like to see Deontay Wilder. I don't think that's a smart fight for him at all. I wouldn't fight Ortiz if I'm Deontay Wilder. I don't fight him if I'm any of these guys. There's not enough to gain in a win, and he might beat you. He's a tough guy.
I mean, that's the definition of being the boogeyman, and he is the boogeyman of this division.
Oh, for sure.
Now, I agree with that completely. Moving on, I want to talk about this tweet after the Ruiz-Joshua fight. Tyson Fury sent out a tweet of encouragement to Joshua. He said, "We have our back and forth, but Anthony Joshua changes stars through life. Heavyweight boxing these things happen. Rest up, recover, regroup, and come again. But then, that was directly after the Ruiz-Joshua fight. Then in the build-up to the Fury-Schwarz fight, Fury tells IFL TV if he can't beat Ruiz in a rematch, he needs to retire. Simple as that. Forget about it. Give it up. What do you think of these comments?
The first one I totally agree with. They almost contradict one another. This is heavyweight boxing. These things happen. Rest up, recover, come at it again. You got this, Joshua. And if you can't beat Ruiz in a rematch, you need to retire. Simple as that. Forget about it. Give it up. And it could be that if Ruiz fought Joshua 10 times, he'd beat him 10 times. But styles make fights.
Yeah.
Just because I beat you and you beat so-and-so doesn't mean I can beat so-and-so. Styles make fights. It's going to be a completely different fight. Every guy. Let me give you an example. Do you know who Jorge Juarez is? Canelo Alvarez has a loss and 2 draws, and I have a feeling he's going to be in both of our top 10s. One of his only loss is Floyd Mayweather Jr. He's got the draw with Triple G. The other draw, he was undefeated and fought a guy named Jorge Juarez, who was 3-5 at the time. Today, Jorge Juarez has 8 wins, 27 losses, and 3 draws. That's Canelo Alvarez's other draw. So styles make fights. You're not going to tell me if he loses to Ruiz, because he could lose to Ruiz over and over and over. I've had 36 scrub scraps, 32 wins, 2 losses, 2 draws. Both losses, both draws, left-handed people. And 2 of those guys were 3-5. So not the baddest dude on the list, but somebody who could beat me, because styles make fights.
Yep. Now, where do you think, say Ruiz does win, where does Joshua go from there? I mean, he needs fights to come back. How many fights do you think he needs to take before he gets back in the title hunt?
I'm not even sure a rematch should happen based on what I just said. You might want a warm-up fight before that. And especially after Joshua's comments following the fight that he doesn't remember anything after the 3rd round. He can't remember the fight. No. When that happens to a fighter, it changes. It can. Like the yips in baseball. It can change their character, change their makeup as a fighter. I don't know. That's the type of fight. When I see somebody's career go in the trajectory Joshua's was, and then they have a fight like that, that's scary. I don't know who he is right now. Yeah. I don't know who Anthony Joshua is. So if he loses another one like that, where does he go from there? I don't know. That's really tough to say. He needs that bounce back type of fight. Maybe now, maybe prior to the rematch. I know there's a clause in there, but that's a tough managerial decision to give him right back to the guy who he made him look bad.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't remember after the 3rd round, that's brain trauma you already had because of the knockdowns, because you can't remember. Plus the added brain trauma of what happened when you didn't know what was going on. Yeah. I agree with you. I think take a break. Take a year-long break. We've seen boxers do this. We've seen boxers take breaks and after tough losses, and we will get to that in our preview for the fights to come this weekend. And they come back, and they come back and better than ever. So I think if you are Joshua, and if you are taking this loss tough, it's admirable and respectable for you to take a break and let the division move on. Right now, it's still a mess, because even if Joshua does take a break, there's still Ruiz, there's still Fury, there's still Wilder. Take a break, let the division figure itself out. Now, if he does take a year-long break, I can't guarantee that the division will figure itself out in a year because it's boxing. But he can come back, and it would be clearer. And he will have a clear path back to the top.
Well, and I'm not in the gym with him. You kind of have to trust his management for this one. But like I said, this is the point in his career to be the most careful with him. Yeah. Because we don't know what we're going to get moving on from here.
Yeah. Moving on from that, we are going to get into pound-for-pound rankings, as you mentioned before. But before that, I would like to discuss an idea I had brought up. In MMA, they have different promotions with champions, and that was displayed this past weekend for Bellator as they had the Rising champion take on the Bellator champion, and the Rising champion won, and he had both promotions belts. What do you think of, instead of the WBC, the WBO, the WBA, the IBF, we have the Showtime champion, the DAZN champion, the ESPN Plus or Top Rank champion?
See, I'd say financially, and as far as negotiations work, that makes more sense. But the problem with that is that the problem with boxing in general is that there's no national commission. So as soon as somebody has enough money to build another sanctioning body, they can. And as soon as DAZN was just nothing last year.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have their own boxing champion. So I like the idea, and I get the parts of it that make sense. But at the same time, there's 8 channels we've never heard of that are going to pop up and buy rights to have a champion. And we're going to have, I think that in the long run, that leads to more champions instead of less.
I agree with you. I think from a casual boxing viewer standpoint, it would be beneficial because it becomes easier to follow.
Yes.
But from an actual boxing fan standpoint, it would not be good because it would be harder to get a unified champion if you do have these other promotions and they already don't want to work together as is. So if they do work together and the Showtime belt ends up on DAZN, that's not going to be good for the promoters.
Yeah. Well, and then everybody loses.
Yeah. That was something I thought I'd bring up, and we both seem against it, which is all right. Now let's move on to the top 5 pound-for-pound rankings in both of our opinions. I'm going to start off with my number 5. I have Tyson Fury at number 5
Oh.
here. Now, I understand...
he'd have to beat 2 Lomachenkos, right?
I understand that there is feedback I'm going to get from this, but with pound for pound, we always look past the big guys. But when someone like Tyson Fury comes along and he's able to do what he can against the big guys, what little guys do against each other, I think that speaks volumes, especially in the pound for pound. Because Tyson Fury's this big, he's this massive human being, and he's able to dance around the ring like Lomachenko. He's able to slip punches along the ropes like Canelo Alvarez. He's got a little bit of all these other pound-for-pound greats, people in the talking for the pound-for-pound. So I don't understand why him being big and him having these God's gifts of his size why would that go against him in this pound-for-pound talks?
Well, I think that's math. I think it's just basic math when you look at a guy that's 285 pounds and you've got a whole stable of 140, 150, 160-pound guys that when you say pound for pound, is he twice as good? That's why I say he'd have to fight 2 Lomas, Yeah. Because if that dude was twice as big, if Bud Crawford was 120 pounds bigger or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? I think it's math that keeps people... But what if
Fury's twice as small? He's faster. That's less weight on him. He's moving around the ring. Still the same in comparison to the others.
He boxes well, but I'm not sure he's incredibly fast for 285 pounds, and I'm not sure he's incredibly strong for 285 pounds. I think it's impressive at his size. Okay. And not necessarily, and a lot of that stuff's ring hours. Stuff he's picked up along the way and being a good learner.
So if you didn't have Fury at number 5, who's your number 5?
My number 5 was, and I had to have a little caveat in here. Are wins, or is this up to me? Is Canelo Alvarez better than Triple G? If I had Triple G winning both of those fights on my scorecard, let's just say for the sake of argument.
I think you're perfectly viable to put him on there.
All right, then Canelo Alvarez is my number 5.
Okay.
I have 2 honorable mentions just so that I've said them somewhere out loud because these guys are ready to take over the world. Alexander Usyk and Arthur Beterbiev would both make my top 10.
Yeah, I like Usyk. I think if he was brought into the heavyweight picture, I think that'd be something interesting. But yeah, I agree with you those. But why Canelo at 5?
I think that Canelo and Triple G are head-to-head 2 of the top guys, and that actually is my 4 is Triple G, and that's why I asked. Because I think Triple G is just a hair better than Canelo, but these are 2 guys at the top of their game that are better than everybody else, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I have Triple G at 4.
Hey.
I agree with you, especially after this last fight. I can't praise him enough. Shows that knockout power. That's something that we did not see against Canelo, and even the fight in between, it took him a while. Now, I think, yeah, Triple G is still in the top 5. You can't discredit him from those Canelo fights. I had Canelo winning the second one, but I still did have Triple G winning the first one. And a draw is, I don't think anything should be demoted or taken away from a draw and then a tough decision. I think he's still there. And that tough decision was the reason why I do have him at 4. And I'll talk about that later. But yeah, you said you have Triple G at 4 as well?
Yep, we both have Triple G at 4.
So who do you have at 3?
Errol Spence Jr.
Solid.
Olympian. Just a great, if you watch him, he's just a great fighter. He's I mean, and all the guys in this top 5 are monsters.
Errol Spence Jr. for me was an honorable mention because I think he has the ability to have some great fights because there's a lot of good Showtime welterweights. There's Keith Thurman. Manny Pacquiao was discussed as a possible opponent. Yeah. So I think he has better fights for him
coming up. Forward. He could work his way into that.
Yeah, mix. He could.
Yeah.
And, I mean, before the Mikey Garcia, he wasn't fighting the best. He wasn't fighting anyone in the discussion for being a great welterweight.
Yeah.
So I think if he were to get those fights, I think that would push him forward. He is an honorable mention for me because he is on the outside looking in. And the fights, he needs a bigger fight than someone who's coming up. What, Mikey Garcia came up 3 weight classes to fight him?
Yeah.
So,
and a substantial break, one of the more substantial breaks I've ever seen from a champion.
And that's your best fight? I don't necessarily get that, you know? So number 3 for me was Canelo. Like I said, if I had to pick a winner in that second fight with Triple G, I have Canelo. But I really do think it was a draw. But he came back from what was the draw, but was actually a Triple G win, and he came back. And in that fight, the second fight with Triple G, he looked amazing. He was coming forward. He was the one looking to knock Triple G out. When that's how Triple G fights, he did what Triple G normally does to Triple G.
And that's so your 3 is Alvarez?
Yeah.
And who do you have at 2?
2. Terrence, Bud, Crawford.
I was going to say, we better have the same 2 and 1. If Errol's not in the top 5, these better be Bud Crawford and Lomachenko.
Yeah, I think, for me, I probably would normally put Terrence Crawford above Lomachenko for the 1. Yes. I feel like Lomachenko, the size is a factor with Lomachenko, and he's not fighting the right guys, and it's not the same. You know, it's not the same. He just doesn't feel like he is on the level of his opponents. Terrence Crawford is good, and the reason I put him at 2 and I put Lomachenko over him for this pound for pound ranking was because of the Amir Khan fight and how just dissatisfying and how it left a sour taste in my mouth.
For me, for my eye, Lomachenko is the greatest pure boxer of my lifetime. I mean, Roy had more speed, at his size. Roy Jones had more speed. There are guys that had this phenomenal gift, but as far as boxing, as far as pure how you're supposed to play the game, hit and don't be hit, and the tactical maneuvers, and this guy is a mastermind type boxer. I'm big on intricacies, and I've never seen anybody fight at the level of Lomachenko, not in my lifetime.
Yeah,
this is the best boxer out.
I agree with you. I mean, his streak where he was just getting no mosses, people quitting in the middle of a fight, I think that speaks volumes for itself. I think Lomachenko needs a solid dancing partner. He needs to either go up or fight someone at welterweight.
Find a Frazier. Yeah.
Find someone.
Your Joe Frazier. Yeah.
Because when you go on the street and you talk to random people, I feel like they might know who Deontay Wilder is. They might know, based off this weekend, who Tyson Fury is, because ESPN is feeding all that up.
And in some cases, what you're saying is what I was saying about Tyson Fury. You're never going to see Lomachenko in a big sparkly hat dancing his way to the ring to living in Uzbekistan. You're not. It's not going to happen. He's the gentleman, the humble type that I was talking about, and because of that, people don't know. I did a comparison, and it's part of the entertainment from my boxing club, the entertainment portion. But the top 10, there was a time when 8, this is 20 years ago maybe, when 8 of the top 10 pound-for-pound boxers were on the top 10 paid boxers list.
Yeah.
We just did our top 5. We did a bunch of honorable mentions. You know what we didn't say? Adrian Broner, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Conor McGregor. But those are the top 3 earners in the sport of boxing last year, which should go to show you that your skill level and your paycheck aren't going to match up in this sport.
Canelo's up there.
Yeah, 5th, maybe?
Something like that.
He's one of 2 guys. Him and Gennady were the only 2 guys that were on both lists.
Yeah.
Now 8 of the top 10 boxers aren't even on the top 10 earners list. You've got to sell yourself, and Lomachenko doesn't do that. Fury has done a great job of that, and Lomachenko, you don't see enough of that. He wants his skill level to do the talking, and he has, but
I don't even think that's really, obviously talking shit will get you somewhere. We've seen that with Conor McGregor. We've seen that Fury does it very well.
Floyd, Broner,
yeah.
Ali.
But Canelo, he got a rub from when he faced Floyd. Granted, I don't think that was the best fight for him to take that early in his career.
He was young, yeah.
Yeah, but he got a rub, and he is this level of superstar. He's up there. Now, I think it does come down to a dance partner. Even Fury, it wouldn't be as big as he is if it wasn't for Deontay Wilder and him getting knocked down and doing the whole Undertaker shtick. But, I think if Vasily Lomachenko found a solid dance partner, if that means going up to welterweight and fighting someone like Terrence Crawford, I think if that happened and you could say this is for pound, number 1, I think that sets up for people to know who Lomachenko is, or even Crawford isn't that big of a name.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. Lomachenko has put himself in a position where he now has to do that. Yeah. Because of his lack of flair, he now has to do inside the ring, be the best, appeal to people like us, because you're not appealing to the general public.
I mean, if you want to get on that level, it's cool. Look at Mighty Mouse, for example. He didn't want to go up and fight TJ Dillashaw. That was the super fight. He never wanted to go up and do that. He kept going and taking on the next best opponent at flyweight, And then someone came along, and now he's fighting in Asia. Someone came along, beat him in Henry Cejudo, and then he got shipped out to Asia.
Gone.
He's not in the UFC anymore. So with something like that, you got to be able to take your opportunities. You got to be able to find your opportunities and take them. Because right now he is on top of the boxing world. If he can transfer that over to a great fight and become on top, or if not on top, in the pop culture world, I think that sets him up to get enough money and get paid, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, some of this is just naked eye stuff for me with Lomachenko. Just seeing him do things that I've never seen done before, that I'm analyzing and doing, the statistics in my head while I'm watching and realizing I'm seeing some things that I've just never seen anybody do before.
Yeah.
At the rate that he does them.
Right now, most of the casual fans, boxing is just knockouts. It's just knockdowns. Everyone gets out of their seat, goes, "Oh my God!" That's what makes boxing great. But if they can get their eyes to a Lomachenko and see what he does and how well he does it in the ring, I think that will open up and make boxing even more mainstream than it is.
Oh, I've got an answer to that in the flurry.
I mean, everyone thought Floyd Mayweather was that, but it wasn't as entertaining to watch. What Floyd Mayweather did, boxing fans can appreciate. Casual fans, not so much. I remember after the Pacquiao fight, everyone was up in arms. What? How did Floyd Mayweather win that? It was boring. Everyone was going on about how boring that fight was. But to the boxing fan, it makes sense.
To the purists, yeah. Yeah, it made sense.
Now,
that was how to beat that guy.
Bring someone like Lomachenko in who dances circles around his opponents. To the naked eye, it looks like he's outclassing that guy. Granted, he isn't throwing haymakers and getting knockdowns and that stuff. He is making people quit. He had 4 no-mosses in a row. That's absurd.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yes. All right. Now let's move on to the previews for the fights this weekend. We got a juicy special one coming up June 22nd. We got Paulie Malignaggi taking on Artem Lobov in bare knuckle fighting championship. Now, Jared, I know you are not a big fan of bare knuckle fighting.
I just think it's bad for the sport. We're talking about the entertainment. We're going the wrong direction. You just said we've got to find a way to get Lomachenko into the public eye. This is the opposite. Listen, NFL has taken all kinds of heat for concussions and safety protocol and stuff. Now, if the NFL opened a little side league, or there was another football league, not the NFL, but another football league, and they didn't wear helmets, it was football without any pads.
NFL Street.
Yeah, NFL Street. There you go. That's horrible for the sport. They may get a few viewers, but you're appealing to extremists, I think. At that point, you're really appealing to the general public is not going to be interested in this very much. And I think the league will probably fail.
Yeah,
like the AAF.
Yeah, I don't know how well this is going to do going forward. This is the biggest fight in bare knuckle fighting since its creation about a year ago. But what you're talking about, I think Paulie Malignaggi will do great things bringing that boxing. Most of their roster is former UFC fighters.
Yeah.
So they're just throwing hands. They're just banging.
Yeah, well, the problem I have is I think Lobov's more durable, and Paulie's got bad hands. I think this is a bad fight for both of them because Malignaggi's going to hit him with whatever he wants and likely break his hand, one or the other. And Lobov's going to, I think, be able to take most of those punches, and what you just end up with is, a really ugly. This is gonna get ugly. I do not see big, great things. This is gonna go viral, and everybody's gonna, this will be on NBC 2 years from now. That's not the direction this is gonna go. This will likely end badly for more than one person.
I mean, yeah, I think bare knuckle fighting is for the give me blood audience, the just bleed guys.
Yeah, the ancient Colosseum type audience, yeah.
So,
why don't they both fight a lion instead?
But I do think if Polly can utilize footwork, and Lobov is a bull, he's gonna throw heavy shots. He's always throwing the power shots.
Heavy shots.
He's gonna take them. But if Polly can utilize his boxing footwork and utilize his ability to slip punches, I think if he does just go for points, pepper him a couple times, get out of the way of his punches, I think Polly can do something to show that bare knuckle fighting isn't as... I think he can bring a legitimacy to the boxing in bare knuckle fighting.
Hey, if somebody can, he's got the skill set.
Yeah.
He definitely has the skill set to do that.
Former champion.
He ought to dominate. Because of the rules, he can't get tackled or elbow smashed or anything. So because of the way the rules are set up, Malignaggi ought to be very dominant.
Yeah.
In this fight. If his hands don't break, I think he wins it walking away.
Yeah, but if Lobov can land, I think Malignaggi might be in a tough
My
spot.
best prediction is it's ugly for both of them.
Yeah. Moving on as well this weekend, Sunday, June 23rd, we have a big fight on Fox. Let's start off with the co-main event. Guillermo Rigondeaux, he is the lineal super bantamweight champion. He coming off a win, but before that, he took a break after a loss, one of the no-mosses to Vasily Lomachenko. Yep. And he will be facing the WBC Super Bantamweight champion, Julio Ceja. And this is for the WBS Junior Bantamweight Eliminator fight. So, tell me, what do you think of this fight?
Ceja. I like Rigondeaux. I think he's one of the better pure boxers in the division. And maybe I'm just more hoping Ceja wins because I feel like I've seen enough of Rigondeaux. He's not the most entertaining guy to watch, and I don't think either one of them can beat that Naoya Inoue.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Neither one of them's beating that kid. We're going to figure out, it's just like Pacquiao, where all the announcers got his name wrong in the first fight. We're going to figure out how to pronounce that guy's name, I promise you.
Yeah.
He's that good.
Yeah, I think for the sport of boxing, to have someone like Rigondeaux win this fight and then go take on, what's his name?
Inoue?
Yeah, to have him face him, just because he does bring the rub from his match with Lomachenko, so it just brings a little bit more notoriety to that. I think these lower weight classes have some phenomenal fights, and they have some of the best boxing, but it is tough to watch for the just bleed fans, you know?
Absolutely.
It's hard to watch for the casuals, and yeah.
Well, then you've got to balance that out to get the entertainment right. You have to be able to please both of those people if you're going to make it work.
Yeah. And moving on to the main event of that Fox card on June 23rd, this Sunday. It's a junior middleweight fight. Jermell Charlo, one half of the Charlo twins. He's looking to bounce back after losing his WBC junior middleweight championship to Tony Harris last year, which we can talk about, but I thought that was a tough decision. And he's taking on Jorge Cota, 28-3, not that much on Jorge Cota. I think this is just a setup to get Jermell Charlo back in the win.
Yes, this is the type of fight that Anthony Joshua needs. I think Charlo wins. I think it's fairly convincing. Again, it's a safer fight, but after a loss like that to an undefeated guy, you have to understand, as a professional, he's learning how to lose for the first time.
Yeah.
And when you see guys come in and they're completely different fighters, it's after a fight like that. It's after they take a loss like that. So I think this is smart. This is a good managerial move, and I think he should beat Kota.
I did think that the loss to Harrison was a interesting decision. I feel it was weird because I did have Charlo winning that fight.
Yes.
Now, what we know about the corruption in boxing and how scorecards can be swayed, I feel like Charlo would have gotten the judges.
That's what I liked about it.
Yeah, I mean,
at least we can be sure they didn't rob the guy. Yeah.
So
because it would have went the other way if they were paying favorites.
I feel like, Charlo, I feel like he'll get back on the win side. I feel like he isn't going to let that loss get to him. He's still young, and he does have his twin brother in his corner helping him get through that tough loss. His twin brother, Jamal Charlo, has a fight next weekend. We will get to that in our next episode. But moving right along, there's been a lot of talk in the air about Tom Cruise and Justin Bieber. Now, fighting fans, they aren't gonna like this that we're talking about there. But let's appeal to the casual audience. What do you think if Tom Cruise and Justin Bieber put on the gloves and got into the boxing ring?
See, first of all, I want them to be doing a scrub scrap. UFC doesn't make any sense. These guys shouldn't be getting injured in an octagon. That's step one of what was wrong with what Justin Bieber said. They should be boxing. They should have proper headgear, proper gloves, maybe the pneumatic gloves I'm always talking about. Be on a mat instead of in a ring. Do all the things you possibly can to make it as safe as possible for these two men, and then let them have at it. And I think Justin Bieber, youth wins out there. I think he's I've also seen him do some athletic
does his own stunts.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing about Iron Man in a fight is that he's not Tony Stark and he doesn't get to bring the suit. We'd be talking about Robert Downey Jr. having a fist fight. Jake Gyllenhaal is not the southpaw he was in the movie. I promise you, boxers will kick that guy's ass.
Yeah, it's silly. I do think the Biebs takes it. It's interesting. They did have celebrity boxing a while back.
Parts of it worked.
Yeah, it did, but there is a fine line between some of this stuff. I think if you do have something like that, you need celebrities to take it seriously. And I feel like if they were to do it with Justin Bieber and Tom Cruise, they'd both take it seriously. They'd both put in a fight camp.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes down to it, it would be interesting. It's a spectacle. It's like the Floyd Mayweather Conor McGregor fight. Yeah, it's a talking point.
The highest grossing fight in history.
Yeah. It's a talking point. But after we get it, we know what's going to happen. We knew what was going to happen. It's exactly what we expected. There is all this hype around it going in because you never really know. But then once it happens, we all knew.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that tweet went viral. I mean, you've got to take, if you're boxing, don't you have to pick some of this stuff up?
Yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead of myself here.
This shows how big trash talk and smack talk is in the boxing game. When something like this, something playful between two celebrities brings the whole internet and all of pop culture into a spiral.
It's inherent inside of us to get excited about something like that if it's somebody we know.
Yeah, and that's something. Muhammad Ali was the great because of what he could do in the ring, as well as him being able to sell the fight with his trash talk.
Promote himself, yeah.
Yeah, and Conor McGregor is the biggest star the UFC has ever seen because he can promote himself and he can put butts in seats and sell a pay-per-view. So bringing in celebrities, and if that would definitely sell. More people, that would have gigantic numbers on it if you did have a Justin Bieber, Tom Cruise fight. And
huge.
Yeah, the people, no matter what they say, they will watch that and they will see it.
That's a beautiful segue to the flurry. And in the flurry, I wanted to talk about basically what we're talking about here is boxing entertainment, how to draw entertainment from the general public. And one of the biggest problems we have is that I think the boxing purist, that part of you that goes, well, it's kind of, Tom Cruise fighting Justin Bieber, it's kind of silly. But of the people that show up to a boxing match, I've separated the reasons people show up to boxing matches into 4 different categories. The stories, you hear a good story about a person's life and you want to be a part of the magic they're making happen.
Tyson Fury is a perfect example.
Perfect example, yep. Fun and entertainment, those screamers for blood would fall under that category. Familiarity is the number one. If your brother, sister, cousin, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, or cat is getting into a fight, you're going to go and watch it. You have 2 kids in a boxing match from the same high school, the whole high school, two teachers from the same college, the majority are going to show up for familiarity. It's why this went viral.
Or even if you see a boxer going on First Take or something, more sports fans are going to buy that and watch it.
Yeah, because it's a different avenue. The thing about fighting in general that's always gotten me is if we pull up to a 4-way intersection and we see boxing, see a basketball game happening on one corner and a football game on another corner and baseball on another corner, and then there's a fist fight. Everybody at that intersection is watching the fist fight.
Yeah.
The ratings for football, basketball, baseball, they dwarf the rating for boxing. And why is because we keep catering to the out for blood extremist and the boxing purist. And that 70-year-old guy that's like, you see the way he slipped that punch? Oh, that was beautiful. That's not making up the majority. You make these shorter fights that don't last an hour to see. Now if you saw those 2 kids squaring up behind wherever they were out in the yard and you click on that on your phone and you're about to watch a fist fight, and then the first thing you do is click on it again to see how long the video is, and you've got 47 minutes to watch to see who won this fight, chances are you don't keep watching it. You're going to shut it down. If it says 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's something that Justin Bieber and Tom Cruise could actually do after a 2-week, 3-week, training camp. You get them in the gym 5-10 times for an hour. They know how to protect themselves. This is something they could actually do. There was a time Joe Biden said that what I'd like to do with Donald Trump is take him out behind the gym at the high school and kick his ass. Why don't we have that available? Why isn't that there? Goes back to the mayor in Baltimore. Like, if he's onto something, his post went viral too. If that's something that people believe would work, where is it? Where is it? Why don't we make that available to Trump and Biden? Do you know the whole world would watch that? Of course, it'd be the most entertaining thing. It's the part of celebrity boxing that did work. There were parts of it that
Putin would eat
sucked.
popcorn already.
Yeah, I'm saying I'd watch Elizabeth Warren fight AOC. I mean, let's make a little tournament out of the politicians, and that's just it. Is that it's not just celebrity familiarity that worked with celebrity boxing. That same familiarity, if it was a little bit easier to run an event, you put them anywhere. You put them into schools. And outside of the psychological benefit, I'm just trying to focus in on the entertainment aspect right now. You put them in a school, I think they'd be great in prisons, but give them the safest way, whatever the safest way for 2 beginners to boxes, that should be available. I had mentioned taking the helmets off, and you'd be appealing to those wingers, when you take the helmets off and say, we've got a new football league for real men, and that wouldn't do well. This is the equivalent. The bare knuckle is the equivalent of that. So where is the flag football for boxing? We've taken the helmets off and done football the real way, with the bare knuckle fighting. So we have that equivalent. Where's the flag football equivalent to boxing? If we had that, Tom Cruise and Justin Bieber, he could have had something to invite him to outside of an octagon. Like, what are you, scared? You know, yeah, well, somebody could get hurt, seriously injured. I don't want a broken arm, broken leg. And it's not that bad things couldn't happen. It's just that it could be done safer. If amateur boxing is the safest way we can do boxing, then it should be the safest way we can do boxing. Yeah. It shouldn't be that other ways are safer and also illegal, because we've shown that safer means more people are involved. And if more people are involved, you get the familiarity, you get the entertainment aspect. You can make it 4 minutes instead of 40. And Justin Bieber and Tom Cruise, this is right up their alley. Sure, we should offer that. That has been it for Throwing Jabs Boxing Podcast, episode 0.2. It's been fun. It's been great. Jared, how can they reach out to you if they want to? I've got a Scrubs group on Facebook. I'm Jared Jones on Facebook. The Twitter's coming soon. I actually have a meeting with the boxing commissioner tomorrow, so I'm hoping surely to offer something just like what I've been describing. So stay tuned. Oh, good luck with that. Thank you, my friend. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Big Jace, Jace, Big Jace the Ace on Twitter, as well as at Throwing Jabs on Twitter, as well as there is a Throwing Jabs podcast group on Facebook, or it's a page. You can just like that if you want, as well as we have our own website. So if you want to go check that out, be my guest, throwingjabspodcast.com. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time.